So I'm going to talk about specification for 15 minutes and give some real practical examples. For those of you that watched the presentation yesterday, I'm just going to go sort of a little bit deeper in terms of real examples. And what we're going to look at is what I've put together is like sort of 10 things that you should be doing on every project in terms of specification. And encourage people to keep the conversation going in the chat here on that side of the screen, I think, if I've got the thing right, and also on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, hashtag CLS2020. And we can't meet physically, so if we can try and connect a little bit digitally. So we'll connect on LinkedIn, connect on Twitter, and have conversations in the networking afterwards. I'd just like to start, we've got lots of case studies on our website where different companies are making a success of using the MBS platforms, but we often talk about the large practices, the big multidisciplinary or the big international practices. But I just want to highlight one case study that went live a couple of weeks ago and look at one of the quotes. So we talk about is digital for SMEs, for small practices. And we've got a fantastic case study with Jay Foster, architects and RIBA practice. And just highlight the quote here. So talking about taking some of the methodologies that big practices use and the power and risk reduction of things going wrong in a project through specification. It's your safety net. It allows you to deliver projects to that level of quality you want, protecting yourself, making sure everything you want included, getting it documented, getting it in the contract documentation set. So it's just a nice one, maybe to start, just to frame why specifications are important. And the 10 things I'm going to go through here are on this checklist. I have a little sort of 45-second slide on each of them. And everyone's been listening for 3 or 4 hours. If you want to get a pen and paper and sort of tick these off as I go through, feel free, and keep the feedback going in the chat window. We can maybe talk about some of these afterwards in the Q&A as well. So the first one, around getting your coding, your classification, your type coding right. And you see I've got a little illustration of the RIBA plan of work stages here. So we're talking about just like moving from preparation into maybe starting the spec writing or starting the technical design. And I'm going to pinch an example here from the practice BDP. I think we might even have Mike Riley on the was one of the delegates today. But I really like the way that they prepare for the spec writing, where they talk about the packages that are needed. They've got the classification codes. They have little 3-digit codes for the packages. Then as the project progresses, given each type of specification a project code. And that means when you come into the specification itself, looking at MBS Chorus here now, primary school project from BDP, you can just quickly put those 3-digit codes in and see everything in that package. So there's all the roof covering systems, all classified correctly. And there's all of the opening systems. And that can be done in the software where you just go in and at the top of the spec, you've got your classification, you've got your title, and just use the prefix and the suffix, but consistently across the project for all of the various systems and products. And at that same sort of stage of the project, make sure you understand the responsibilities in terms of specification. So just go back to that little chart again, the planning chart, the responsibilities matrix. What's going to be contractor design and what's going to be traditional sort of full prescriptive specification. And 2 really simple examples here. We've got a floor covering system and a roof covering system, where one's going to be a full spec and one's going to be a performance. So looking at the full spec here, this is where the designer is going to go through and pick each of the individual products. And there's your checklist of the products that are in a floor covering system, from underlay to primer to the actual floor cover itself. Whereas if we look at the roof covering system, this is a performance spec. So the products themselves have been sort of parked away, and you've got the tight performance clauses around things like fire performance, durability, structural performance, the design standards you want. So it's a really, really good brief to go into that contractor design package. And you see that from MBS, we research the standards and have drop-down values and guidance to sort of help you through that. And if you've got your type codes, you've got your design responsibilities in, then maybe next is thinking of how you're going to split the specifications on the project, especially if you're working in a collaborative, multidisciplinary environment. So coming again to this sort of fictitious project here, you may have the sort of employees requirements, architect spec, building services spec. If you're in the cloud, you can invite the different spec writers in there and have real sort of pinpoint control on the permissions. So you've got this user Kate that's contributed to the architectural spec, whereas there's this user Alan who's contributed to the MEP but read only the architecture and maybe excluded or maybe given read only access to the employees requirements. So if I switch now from the user Stephen to Kate, you can see in the top right hand corner, Kate's got contributor rights to the architectural spec, but when she comes into the sort of prelims here, you'll notice that when she tries to come in and edit it, you've got the access control that's been set up, but you can still contribute, collaborate by adding notes that can get reported on, and keep those notes attached to the specification as it develops. There for everyone in the project to see. And now we're moving sort of more, you're starting to go into that sort of technical design phase where you're not just thinking of the system performance that's going into these packages, but you're thinking of how you're going to verify that performance. So it's one thing saying what you want, but are you going to go and test each thing or set the rules for how it's going to get tested? So we're going to jump back to the fictitious spec again. Before we do it though, I just want to compare building a building with building some software. So this is just classic software V diagram where you're testing your requirements on the sort of way back up, and it's the same for buildings. So here's your partition systems. You want a certain acoustic performance, so you've specified that. At the same time, like this is really, really important, specify how that's going to be tested, how it's going to be verified. And you can do that in the system performance clauses, like prior to the building being built. And then if you move down the section, you can specify verification rules once the building's been built. And we talked in the previous presentation about performance gap. You're always going to have a performance gap unless you specify how you're going to actually check that at design time and checking it once the building's been built. So that's one of the sort of checklist items to have a think about. And then probably the biggest discussion yesterday, the biggest discussion today, especially with an audience that's manufacturers and designers and contractors, is defending the spec. When you've made a decision that's important, how do you make sure that the quality doesn't drop for sort of reasons of cost? So let's just jump across here. We look at a structural spec and we just pick something simple like we did yesterday, just a concrete block. You may have done lots of analysis and you worked out exactly what's the product for this project. So here, for example, we'll pick the lignite concrete block again. Helping manufacturers work with designers, so they're both there collaborating together. Got really strong technical information of why you've specified that. Got some notes in the spec. Big tip in the prelims, sort of construction management section. Specify, like, if a substitution is going to be proposed, what are the rules? How is it going to be judged? Not just it's cheaper, but really good clause there from MBS to use. And then we're just going to flip across to our manufacturer platform here. That allows you to defend the spec by doing a sort of comparison. So this is what I've specified, and make sure that if anything is being considered for substitution, that it's judged fairly against the sort of technical characteristics and whether it's got third-party certification, etc. Okay, number 6, we've been talking about digital all day and we haven't talked about the 3D model once, but connecting the digital information in your specification with the digital information in the 3D model. Remember, BIM isn't just about specification, it's also about the 3D aspects as well. So here you can see one of our plugins that we've got for the tool Autodesk Revit, and just to demonstrate how easy it is to link the information in the 3D model with the well-structured information in the spec. So you can see on the left-hand side, there's a few objects there that haven't been linked yet: the ceiling, the dispenser, the basin. And you simply click on them in the design tool, find the equivalent item in the spec, and just link the two together. And when they get linked, you'll see the annotations update, you'll see the schedule update. So you just pull in, and there's plenty of case studies on our website showing how this can be done really well, really efficiently, so that you're building that sort of really connected digital federated model, and not just using a 3D model. Phil Blimsey said this one to generate drawings. There's so much more potential here than just using the 3D model as a sort of drawing generator. So you see that everything's linked up. I think I touched on this yesterday, but you've got the ability now in MBS to actually check that everything that's linked up is still linked up together properly. So if we jump across to the model here, it's telling you there's some issues, telling you what's linked up. And the issues here are that the ceiling and the panel linings have sort of gone out of sync on the type codes, type B 001, type D 002, or what have you. You click fix all, and it pushes the information into the 3D model. Everything's synchronized with the spec now, and you can issue those drawings with confidence. Issue the spec with confidence. Issue the schedules, all coming from the connected data model. Again, something we looked at a little bit yesterday and came up today as being really important for tracking that thread of information through the timeline. So we just watch this little sequence. Throughout the project, you're going to be generating specifications, probably as PDFs, pushing them into the common data environment. It's important that when you do publish them, you keep a record and you follow the rules and the different standards for the status codes, the revision codes, the naming convention. So you know what went out of the office on each date, what it was suitable for, what revision it was, who was the person in your office that issued it out, who made the specification decisions. And at any point in time, you can go and click on those record PDFs and see what the data looked like at that point in time. And there's the little revision codes inside the spec, showing you what's been added as new, what's been revised, and what's maybe been removed. Have you got that strategy in your office on how to track those revisions through the project timeline? And then looking at that RIBA plan of work workflow, we're sort of moving now into the construction phase, into the handover phase, making sure that everything that was specified happens, including things like the testing and the submittal reports. So jumping back to this primary school spec here, everywhere the terminology submission, submittal, submit has been used, can be pulled out into a report that can get pushed into the common data environment. So for this flat roof, things like the flood test, things like the inspections, electronic roof integrity tests, all really, really important things, can just be pushed out of the spec now in a format that can just be imported into Viewpoint or into Autodesk BIM 360. So all of these important jobs can happen. They can be assigned, will happen, assigned to the right subcontractor, given the date, and then you have a conversation now, you track that conversation in the common data environment around the individual submittals, which refer back to the right clause in the specification. So you're ensuring quality by making sure that what's specified contractually actually happens, and you're managing that digitally. Something that's true for every stage of a project is capturing knowledge. And like every business has a bit of churn where people leave, people retire, new people start, and you want to make sure that all of the good things that are known get captured in the sort of cloud environment. So when you learn from projects, you push those into Office Masters, you push that into the guidance. So if you, a simple example here, handrails, specify very similar handrails on many projects, you can push that information into your expert system. So the next time you have a project, it's really easy to reuse this information, and you're getting efficiency and quality through standardizing across all of the good things you've learned on previous projects. You can do that with the technical sections, you can do that with the prelims, make it specific to what works well for your practice that you've learned on previous projects. Manage that in the masters and then copy that straight across to the new project. Working on a new school project, let's take it from our maintained standardized masters. So you're going from MBS to the masters to the new project. and you've got that content straight away in your project to work from. The content that you know works for you. And there's that trail that came from that particular master, which just came from NBS. And I think the last one here, race through them, but the 10th item is making sure that you stay current with the latest standards. So our job at NBS is to help you with this. So we've got a team of authors, construction professionals across all the disciplines, from project management, structural engineering, architecture, MEP, and they spend all day, every day, looking at the best ways of specifying, looking at the standards, looking at the publications. And that means that when we make changes to our content, we push that through into your masters. And we give you the sort of before and after report. So 7 things have changed. You then go to your masters and you say, look, this is how it is in your masters. This is what it will update to. And then you can choose, do we want to accept these changes from MBS? Or do we want to continue for whatever reason? And you can use this update functionality at the level of the masters, but also the level of a project spec. So if it's a big project and you're getting towards the end of it, you could do the sort of more the update check and just scan through here to see if there's any really important changes to standards that you'd like to sort of bring up to date, like identification of highways England, whatever, volume 1 for street lighting or what have you. Click update and it'll bring the latest standards into your job. So, summary, whiz through 10 things that from listening to some of our sort of customers that are really sort of pushing the boundaries here, that they're doing on every project, that I've sort of pulled together and thought, okay, here's a nice little list of 10. So I'd be really interested in the chat, maybe afterwards on LinkedIn or on Twitter, but what's your score out of 10? Where are you now? Where would you like to be? If you'd like to run a workshop with MBS, we can put on a sort of lunchtime session. So get in touch with us. I want to finish maybe on this slide. I think Richard mentioned it this morning, but it's not about just incremental improvements to the same thing. Sometimes you have to make a big change. Start to work digital, start to work with connected information, starting to work in the cloud. And we'd like to think that MBS Chorus isn't just a slightly better paper-based way of working. It's a faster horse. So yeah, pop a message in the chat, visit our website, and any questions you've got, drop us an email and we'll get back to you. And see Paul's popped up again. Hi, Paul.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, appreciate. We're conscious of time. Thanks so much, Stephen. I really
Hi, Jill.
look forward to you contributing to the panel. If you haven't already explored MBS Chorus, there's lots of support articles and live webinars to stay updated.